The cold night and the stranger. The night was colder than usual, the kind that bites the skin and makes every breath turn into mist. Evan pulled his worn jacket tighter as he walked through the lonely junkyard he called home. He was just 16, a fatherless boy who fixed broken machines to survive. No one ever visited this side of the town, and no one cared about the boy who lived among rusted metal. As the wind howled through the empty cars, a strange blue light flickered in the distance. It wasn't lightning or a drone. It was softer, pulsing like a heartbeat. Evan frowned and grabbed his flashlight. Curiosity stronger than fear, he followed the glow into the forest behind his junkyard, his boots crunching through the snow. The light grew brighter until he saw it, a metallic pod half buried in the ground, steam rising from the cracks. His heart pounded. A ship, he whispered. A real ship. The pod's surface was covered with strange symbols, and one side was torn open like it had crashed from high above. He stepped closer and froze. Inside the pod lay a woman, her skin pale silver and glowing faintly. Her hair shimmered like starlight, and her clothes were torn and soaked with some kind of blue liquid. She was breathing, weakly, but alive. Evan's hands trembled as he whispered, You're not human." The alien woman's eyes fluttered open. They were large and bright violet, filled with fear and pain. She tried to speak, but only a few words came out. "Please, don't let them find me." And then she fainted. For a moment, Evan just stood there, frozen between fear and pity. He had heard stories of alien smugglers, bounty hunters, and galactic enforcers who punished anyone helping fugitives. But when he looked at her trembling form, something deep inside him, the part that still remembered his mother's kindness, made the choice for him. "I can't leave you here," he murmured. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her fragile body. Her skin felt cold, almost like ice. He looked up at the sky where dark clouds were forming. Somewhere above, thunder rumbled, and faint red lights moved like silent eyes, searching. He lifted her carefully. Though she was taller and heavier than she looked, his arms shook, but he carried her all the way back to his junkyard shack. Each step felt heavier as the wind screamed around him. When he finally reached his small home, he kicked the metal door open and laid her on the old couch near the heater. She shivered even beside the weak flame. Evan searched his shelves and found a worn blanket. He wrapped it around her and whispered, "You'll be fine. Just rest." She looked peaceful now, but her breathing was uneven. Evan sat on the floor, staring at the alien woman in silence. His heart was still racing. What if she's dangerous, he thought. What if someone's looking for her? He looked outside through the cracked window. The sky flashed again, this time brighter, like a ship entering the atmosphere. He turned off the light and held his breath. Through the fog, he saw a red beam sweep across the ground far away. A drone, smooth and silent, moved between the trees, scanning. It was looking for something, or someone. Evan ducked and pulled the curtains shut. For hours, he sat near the window, listening to the faint hum of the machines in the sky. The alien woman stirred once, mumbling in a language he couldn't understand. Her hand clutched her stomach tightly, and that's when Evan noticed she was pregnant. He blinked in shock. "She's going to have a baby," he whispered. Suddenly the pieces started to connect. She wasn't just lost or injured. She was running. Someone was after her. He boiled some water, mixed it with instant soup, and gently tried to make her drink a little. She didn't open her eyes, but swallowed slowly. Her breathing steadied, and her face relaxed. Evan leaned back against the wall, his mind spinning. He remembered his father's last words before disappearing years ago. "Never turn away from someone who needs you, son." He smiled faintly at the memory. Outside, the storm grew wilder, and lightning flashed like angry spears. Evan fixed the broken heater and checked the roof leaks, trying to stay busy. He couldn't stop glancing at her, wondering who she was and why she looked so sad. In her sleep, she whispered again, "He will find me. He always does." The words sent a chill through him. Who is he? Evan thought. And why would he chase a woman carrying a child? When the storm finally calmed, the red lights in the sky vanished. The silence that followed was heavy. Evan sat near her, watching her chest rise and fall. The warmth of the small heater filled the room, but he could still feel the cold from outside trying to creep in. He didn't know that by helping this stranger, he had just stepped into something far bigger than he could imagine. The next morning would bring questions, danger, and choices that would change both their lives forever. As he closed his eyes to rest, the alien woman opened hers, silently watching the boy who had saved her life. Her gaze softened, and she whispered weakly, "Kindness from a human," before drifting back into sleep. Outside, far beyond the clouds, a massive ship hovered silently, scanning the planet below, its sensors locked on a faint signal, a pod beacon that had just reactivated. The hunt had begun, and Evan had no idea that his small act of kindness would soon shake the galaxy itself. The secret shelter. When the morning light crept through the broken window, Evan found the alien woman sitting upright, her silver skin glowing faintly in the dim light. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming, but then she turned her eyes toward him, calm, tired, but alive. "Where am I?" she asked softly, her voice trembling like the wind. Evan rubbed his eyes. "You're in my home," he said. "Well, it's more of a junkyard shack, but it's safe." He handed her a cup of water, watching as she drank slowly. Her hands shook, and Evan noticed strange glowing veins under her skin. He wanted to ask 100 questions, but he stopped himself. "You were in a crash," he said. "I found your pod last night." She looked down at her stomach, one hand resting gently there. "My child," she whispered. "Is it still?" She didn't finish, but Evan nodded quickly. "You're both alive," he said. "Don't worry, I'll help you." Something in her eyes softened, a flicker of hope. "Why?" she asked. "Why would a human help someone like me?" Evan shrugged. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "That's all." She blinked, as if she couldn't understand such simple kindness. For a long time, she stayed quiet, her violet eyes scanning the room, the rusted walls, the small heater, the cracked floor. Finally, she said, "My name is Lyra." "Lyra," Evan repeated. "That's beautiful." She smiled faintly, but then her expression changed, fear returning. "You shouldn't have brought me here," she whispered. "They will come for me." "Who?" Evan asked. "Who's looking for you?" Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the window, her face pale. "If they find me, they'll destroy everything around me," she said quietly. "And anyone who helped me will suffer." Evan frowned. "Then we'll hide you," he said firmly. "No one comes here anyway." She looked at him like he didn't understand how big the danger was. But his determination made her pause. The boy's eyes were full of sincerity, the kind she hadn't seen in years. Evan stood and said, "Come with me." He led her to a hidden trapdoor behind the old generator. It creaked open, revealing a narrow ladder that led underground. "This was my dad's old storm shelter," he said. "No scanners work down here. The metal's too thick." Lyra hesitated at the entrance, but when she heard the faint hum of distant drones in the sky, she followed. The bunker was small, dark, but safe. It had an old bed, shelves with tools, and dim lights powered by a solar battery. Evan dusted the bed and said, "You can stay here until it's safe." Lyra touched the walls, whispering something in her language. The air shimmered faintly, like she was placing a protective field around them. "What did you just do?" Evan asked curiously. "I masked the heat signature," she replied. "No scanners will find this place now." Evan grinned. "Then I guess we're both pretty smart." She looked at him again. This strange, kind human boy, wearing patched clothes and grease on his hands, trying to protect a being far beyond his world. "You remind me of someone," she murmured. "Someone I lost long ago." He didn't ask who. He just smiled and said, "Rest, Lyra, I'll bring you food." That night, as the cold wind blew across the junkyard, Evan worked quietly above ground, fixing old drones to use as decoys. He set them loose in random directions, hoping to confuse anyone tracking her. From the distance, he could see searchlights scanning the forest, loud engines cutting through the fog. His heart pounded, but he stayed calm. He had survived worse storms. This time, he had a reason to fight. Down in the bunker, Lyra couldn't sleep. She kept hearing the distant roar of the ships and the hum of her own heartbeat. In her mind, she saw flashes, a mansion of light, a man's cold eyes, a broken promise, and a contract that traded her freedom for power. She placed her hand on her stomach and whispered, "Not this time." When Evan returned with soup and bread, she was sitting quietly, her eyes wet with tears, He placed the tray beside her and said, "Eat something, you need strength." She looked up and asked softly, "Why do you trust me?" Evan thought for a moment, then said, "Because you looked scared, not dangerous." That simple answer made her heart ache. In all the world she had known, kindness was rare, and here, in a broken place, a human boy offered it without reason. Hours passed in silence, but the world outside was changing. The storm clouds were gone, replaced by faint red trails in the sky, patrol ships moving closer. Evan stood at the door and whispered, "They're not giving up." Lyra's eyes widened. "He sent them," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Who?" Evan asked. "Who's after you?" She looked up, her voice breaking. "My husband." The words hit Evan like thunder. He stared at her in disbelief. "Your husband?" She nodded slowly, tears shining in her violet eyes. "He is powerful, more than you can imagine," she said. "And if he finds me, there will be no mercy." Outside, a faint rumble shook the ground. Evan grabbed his flashlight and whispered, "Then we'll make sure he doesn't." The story of a fatherless boy and a hunted alien had only just begun, but already, fate was weaving their lives together. In the darkness of that shelter, two worlds had met, one broken by greed, the other healed by kindness. And far above the clouds, a deep voice echoed across the stars, "Find her," it commanded, "and burn everything that stands in your way." The bond between them. Days passed slowly in the old underground shelter. The wind above still carried the hum of search drones, but Evan and Lyra had learned to move in silence. He would go out every morning before sunrise, scavenging food, fuel, and batteries, and return before the sky turned red. Lyra's wounds healed fast, her silver skin glowing brighter each day. Sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking, she touched the wall and whispered a prayer in her alien tongue. The metal seemed to vibrate softly, like it understood her. Evan started bringing her little things, a cracked mirror, a music player he repaired, and once, a bunch of yellow wildflowers. "They grew near the old river," he said shyly. "I thought you'd like them." Lyra smiled for the first time since he found her, her voice soft. "They smell like home." They began to talk more, at first, about small things, food, weather, and his broken machines. But slowly, their words reached deeper places. Evan told her about his father, how he left when Evan was just 8, how he learned to survive by fixing what others threw away. Lyra listened quietly, her eyes full of understanding. "Humans," she whispered one night. "You break easily, but you keep standing." Evan laughed. "Yeah. Well, someone has to fix the junk." Sometimes, when the power flickered, Lyra would hum a melody that made the room glow faintly blue. Evan never interrupted. He just sat there, listening, feeling warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. It was strange. She was from another world, yet she made this broken shelter feel like home. One morning, as he cleaned his tools, Lyra asked, "Why do you live alone?" Evan looked down. "People don't like fatherless kids here," he said. "They say we bring bad luck." Lyra tilted her head. "And do you believe them?" He smiled weakly. "Not anymore." For a while, silence filled the room. The heater crackled softly. Lyra touched her stomach and said, "My child will be born soon." Evan nodded. "I'll keep both of you safe, I promise." She stared at him, her eyes shimmering with emotion. "You don't even know who I am." Evan shrugged. "Doesn't matter," he said. "You needed help. That's enough." Those words made her heart ache. No one in her world had ever helped without wanting something in return. In that moment, she realized this boy wasn't just kind. He was rare, a spark of humanity that even her powerful husband could never understand. One night, thunder rolled again in the distance. Evan climbed up the ladder to check the sky. He froze when he saw faint red lights moving in a circle above the forest. They were back, searching again. He hurried down. "They're close," he whispered. "We need to stay quiet." Lyra's hands trembled. "They won't stop until they find me," she said. "He won't stop." Evan grabbed her shoulders gently. "Then we'll outsmart them," he said. "I've been hiding from debt collectors and patrols since I was a kid. Believe me, I know how to vanish." Despite the danger, Lyra smiled faintly. "You're very strange, human." "I get that a lot," he grinned. Hours later, as they sat in darkness, Lyra asked softly, Do humans ever forgive? Evan looked at her, surprised. Sometimes, he said. Why? She turned away, her voice breaking. Because I ran away from someone I once loved. Evan didn't push, he simply said. If you ran, there must have been a reason. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. He changed, she whispered. Power changed him. Love became control. She wiped her tears quickly. I thought I could escape forever, but the galaxy is smaller than it looks. Evan sighed. Then maybe you just needed to crash in the right place. Lyra looked at him, startled. You call this the right place? She asked. He smiled. It's not much, but it's safe, and you're alive. That night, as Lyra slept, Evan sat by her side, repairing an old handheld communicator. He wasn't trying to contact anyone. He just liked fixing broken things. The faint light from his lamp reflected on her peaceful face, and for the first time, he realized how fragile she looked, how human she seemed despite her alien skin. He whispered to himself, whoever's looking for you doesn't deserve you. Far above the clouds, a massive ship hovered silently, its scanners catching faint traces of heat and energy from the region. A deep voice echoed inside the ship. Her signal is weak, but she's alive. The hunter's eyes glowed crimson. Then burn the surface if you must. I want her found. Back in the bunker, Lyra woke with a start. Gasping, Evan rushed to her side. What happened? She grabbed his wrist, her eyes wide. He's coming. Evan froze. You mean your husband? She nodded, trembling. He found me once through a trace of energy. My healing powers can't hide us forever. Evan thought fast. Then we'll move, he said. There's an abandoned tunnel that connects to the old mine. We can go there tomorrow. Lyra stared at him with disbelief. You'd risk your life for someone you just met. Evan smiled faintly. You're not just someone, he said. You're my friend. Her heart twisted at that word. Friend, she repeated softly. It was simple, but to her, it meant everything. She reached out and touched his hand, her voice gentle. Thank you, Evan. As dawn broke, the wind outside carried the faint echo of engines. The sky turned blood red, and the first shadow of danger stretched across the junkyard. The bond between a lonely human and a hunted alien was now unbreakable, and somewhere beyond the stars, a furious billionaire was preparing to reclaim what he had lost, not knowing that love and loyalty were already standing in his way. The discovery. The next morning began quietly. The cold sunlight slipped through cracks in the junkyard roof, dust floating in golden streams. Evan worked near the old workbench, tightening a bolt on the damaged alien pod he had dragged in piece by piece. He didn't know why, but fixing it felt important, like solving a puzzle from the stars. Lyra watched from the bunker doorway, wrapped in a blanket. Her belly had grown slightly larger, the soft glow around her body stronger each day. You don't have to fix that, she said. It's broken beyond repair. Evan smiled, wiping grease from his hands. Everything can be fixed if you understand how it works. Lyra tilted her head, her eyes warm. You talk like an engineer. He laughed, more like a junkyard mechanic. For a few hours, everything felt almost peaceful. They shared bread and soup, talked about Earth's sunsets, and listened to the faint hum of wind through metal. But deep down, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something she couldn't stop. That afternoon, while she rested, Evan continued working on the pod. He connected a power line to one of its panels, sparks flashing blue. Come on, just one more try, he whispered. Suddenly, a holographic image burst to life, filling the room with light. Evan stumbled back, eyes wide. The image showed a tall alien man in regal armor, his golden eyes cold and commanding. Dozens of alien guards stood behind him, banners waving. A voice echoed from the projection, calm but chilling. By order of Valen Zephyr, CEO of Zephyr Industries and Sovereign of the Outer Rings, a reward of 10 million credits is offered for the return of Lady Lyra Zephyr, alive and unharmed. Evan's mouth went dry. He looked at the name flashing beneath the image, Lyra Zephyr, and beside it, the title wife of galactic billionaire Valen Zephyr. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. She's his wife, he whispered. The hologram continued, showing clips of Lyra smiling beside Valen, standing at royal events, waving to crowds. She looked completely different, dressed in crystal gowns, surrounded by light and luxury. nothing like the frightened woman hiding underground. Evan stood frozen, trying to process everything. He felt betrayed, confused, and strangely angry. The hologram ended abruptly, the room falling silent again. Only the faint beeping of a small blinking light remained, a tracking signal. Evan stared at it in horror. No, 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 he muttered. That's a locator. He grabbed his wrench and smashed the console. But the damage was done. The red light kept blinking, sending its signal into the stars. Lyra appeared at the door, alarmed by the noise. Evan, what happened? He turned toward her, eyes wide with panic. You didn't tell me who you really are. Lyra froze. You saw it. I saw everything, he said, his voice shaking. You're married to Valen Zephyr, one of the richest aliens in the galaxy. Lyra looked down, guilt shadowing her face. I wanted to tell you, she said softly. But you wouldn't have helped me if you knew. Evan took a step back, torn between anger and disbelief. You think I'd throw you out because of that? He asked. You think kindness works only for the poor? Lyra's eyes filled with tears. No, she said. I was afraid you'd pity me, or worse, fear me. He exhaled, the frustration fading into confusion. I don't care who your husband is, Lyra, but you should have told me the truth. Before she could answer, a loud rumble echoed from above. The ground shook, metal sheets rattling. Both of them looked up. Lyra's face turned pale. They're here, she whispered. Evan ran to the window. Outside, 3 dark ships were descending through the clouds, engines glowing red. They tracked the signal, he said. I triggered it when I powered the pod. Lyra's voice trembled. We have to go now. Evan grabbed his bag, filled it with tools, batteries, and a small food pack. There's a back tunnel behind the junkyard, he said. It leads to the abandoned mines. We can hide there. Lyra hesitated. Evan, listen to me, she said. You don't understand who Valen is. He will burn this planet just to find me. Evan's eyes hardened. Then we better move before he gets the chance. Outside, spotlights sliced through the fog, drones swarming like insects. A mechanical voice echoed. Attention, unknown life forms detected. Surrender Lyra Zephyr immediately. Lyra grabbed Evan's arm. Please, don't fight them. He shook his head. Not fighting, surviving. They ran through the maze of metal scraps, the air thick with dust and heat. Evan's heart pounded as beams of light flashed across the piles of junk, explosions shaking the ground. At the edge of the yard, they reached a small hatch half buried under debris. Go, Evan said, pushing her inside. Lyra crawled in first, holding her stomach. The tunnel was dark, narrow, and smelled of oil and earth. Behind them, distant explosions echoed. Lyra looked back once, her eyes glistening. Evan, she whispered, you didn't have to risk this for me. He smiled faintly. I told you, Lyra, I don't help people because I have to. I help because it's right. Above ground, the junkyard erupted in fire, drones circling the ruins. Valen's voice echoed from a transmission. Find her. She carries my air. Deep underground, Evan and Lyra crawled through darkness toward uncertain safety. The light from Evan's flashlight flickered, casting shadows on the tunnel walls. Lyra reached out, touching his shoulder. You still don't understand, she said quietly. If he finds us, he won't just take me back. He'll erase everything. Even you. Evan turned to her, his face calm but resolute. Then he'll have to erase the wrong human. Lyra stared at him, her heart heavy with fear and something else. Admiration. The tunnel curved deeper, the roar of engines fading behind them. For a brief moment, silence returned, and Lyra felt the faint rhythm of her child's heartbeat beneath her palm. She whispered softly, maybe, just maybe, this human boy will change everything. Far above, in the orbiting ship, a red-haired commander turned toward Valen Zephyr and said, My lord. The signal vanished underground. Valen's golden eyes narrowed. Then dig them out, he said coldly. No one hides from me. The hunt begins. The tunnels were silent except for the sound of water dripping from above. Evan and Lyra moved carefully through the narrow passage, the air thick with dust and the faint smell of metal. The light from Evan's small flashlight trembled with every step. Above them, the night sky burned red. The ships of Valen Zephyr circled the forest, dropping drones that searched every corner. scanning every trace of heat. The hunt had begun. Lyra's breathing grew heavy. She leaned against the tunnel wall, one hand over her stomach. "I can feel him," she whispered weakly. "He's close." Evan crouched beside her. "We're almost at the exit," he said softly. "Just a little more, okay?" Her violet eyes flickered with pain. "You don't understand," she murmured. "He can track emotions. He built our bond that way." Evan frowned. "He can feel what you feel." Lyra nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "If I fear, he knows. If I cry, he follows." Evan clenched his jaw. "Then we'll give him something else to feel," he said. "Hope." They reached a wider chamber filled with broken machinery. The walls were lined with glowing mineral veins that shimmered faintly blue. "Old mining site," Evan said. "Perfect place to hide." He pushed aside an old crate and uncovered a small control panel. Lyra looked around, uneasy. "What is this place?" "Before the war, they mined this tunnel for energy crystals," he explained. "But the company went bankrupt. Everything down here is dead now." Lyra smiled weakly. "You humans build and abandon so easily." Evan grinned. "We also rebuild." Before she could respond, the ground above shook. Dust rained down from the ceiling. "They're dropping scanners," Evan muttered. "We need to block the heat signature." He opened his bag, pulling out thermal blankets and small EMP grenades he'd salvaged. Lyra watched him move with quick, clever hands, sealing cracks and setting traps. "You've done this before," she said softly. Evan nodded. "I've been running from people my whole life." He looked up and added, "But this time, it's not just for me." Lyra touched his shoulder. "You shouldn't have to fight my battles." He looked at her with quiet determination. "You're not alone anymore." Before either could speak again, a red laser beam cut through the tunnel entrance, melting the rock. Evan grabbed Lyra's hand. "They found us, move." They ran through the winding path, light flashing behind them. The drones descended with shrill metallic cries, shooting plasma bolts that lit up the darkness. Evan threw one of the EMP grenades. The explosion sent a shockwave of blue energy that fried half the machines instantly. The tunnel collapsed behind them, dust filling the air. Lyra coughed, struggling to breathe. Evan pulled her through a side passage and sealed the entrance with fallen rocks. "We're safe for now," he whispered, his own chest heaving. Lyra sank to the floor, trembling. "Evan, I can't keep running." He knelt beside her, brushing dirt from her hair. "You have to," he said, "for your child." She looked up at him, tears glistening. "Do you even know what you're risking?" He smiled faintly. "I know," he said, "but saving you feels like the first good thing I've ever done." Her heart twisted painfully. In that dark tunnel, surrounded by silence and fear, she realized that this boy, this simple human, was braver than anyone she'd ever known. Up above, Valen Zephyr stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the holographic map. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with rage. "Deploy ground forces," he ordered. "Search every inch. I want her alive." The commander hesitated. "My lord, if we attack further, the tunnels may collapse." Valen's expression darkened. "Then collapse them. I will rebuild the planet if I must." Hundreds of drones poured down, forming a mechanical storm. The ground trembled as fire and smoke filled the forest. Evan and Lyra felt the vibrations through the stone. The lights flickered. Evan gritted his teeth. "They're tearing the surface apart." Lyra closed her eyes, whispering words in her language. Her hands glowed as faint energy formed around them. "I can slow them down," she said, "but it will drain me." Evan grabbed her hands. "No, you need your strength." She shook her head. "If I don't, they'll find us in minutes." Evan hesitated, then nodded. "Do it. I'll watch your back." As Lyra concentrated, a soft wave of light spread through the tunnels. The air shimmered. Evan felt the temperature drop. Outside, the scanners began to glitch, their signals scrambled by her energy field. Valen slammed his fist on the console. Interference detected. His advisor looked nervous. "It's her power, my lord. She's shielding herself." Valen's eyes narrowed. "She's learned well, but it won't save her." Down below, Lyra collapsed, breathing heavily. Evan caught her before she fell. "Hey, stay with me," he said. "You did great." She smiled weakly. "You always say that." Evan chuckled softly. Because it's true. For a moment, silence returned. Then from far away, a deep rumble echoed again, stronger this time. They're using seismic bombs. Evan realized. They'll bury us alive. Lyra gripped his arm, fear flashing in her eyes. Evan, if something happens to me. He cut her off. Nothing's happening to you. Not while I'm breathing. He grabbed his tools and began digging toward an old ventilation shaft he had noticed earlier. Every hit echoed through the tunnel like thunder. Sweat ran down his face. Lyra tried to help, but he shook his head. Save your strength. Finally, a faint breeze touched his face. We're through, he said, breaking open the grate. Moonlight poured in, silver and cold. They crawled out onto the surface. Hidden in the shadow of the ruined hills, smoke rose from the forest, and the sky was filled with ships. Lyra looked at the destruction and whispered, "He'll never stop." Evan turned to her, his face calm. "Then neither will I." She stared at him, her heart full of something she hadn't felt in years, faith. Far above, Valen Zephyr stood at the window of his ship, watching the burning ground below. "You can run, Lyra," he murmured, "but you'll always belong to me." And in that same moment, deep within the ruins, a human boy whispered into the wind, "You belong to no one." The hunt had only just begun, but for the first time, it was no longer one-sided. The galaxy's most powerful man was about to learn that even a fatherless human could fight fate itself. The sacrifice. The night sky burned red above the hills. Ships hovered like silent predators. Their lights swept across the forest ruins, searching for any sign of life. Evan and Lyra crouched behind a collapsed tower, the cold wind biting at their faces. Evan checked the scanner he had built from broken tech. The signal bars flashed erratically. "They're scanning every 10 minutes, he whispered. "We have a small window." Lyra leaned back against the stone, exhaustion written across her face. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from the strain of using her powers. The soft glow around her skin had faded, replaced by a dim, fragile light. "Your wounds," Evan said. "You're getting weaker." She shook her head slowly. "It's not the wounds," she whispered. "It's the child." Her hand rested gently on her belly. "He's ready. He's coming soon." Evan froze. "Now." Lyra nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "The stress, the energy, it's triggering early birth." He looked around desperately. "We need shelter. Fast." He spotted a hollow space beneath the wreck of an old starship half buried in the ground. "There," he said. He helped her crawl inside, shielding her from the wind. The metal walls groaned softly, but it was hidden from the sky. Evan lit a small lamp and covered the entrance with scrap metal. "We're safe for now." Lyra's breathing grew faster, her voice breaking. "Evan, I can't hold it." He grabbed her hand, his voice trembling but steady. "I'm here. Lyra, just breathe. Okay? You're not alone." Outside, thunder rolled again. The ground shook as more bombs fell in the distance. Valen's forces were tearing apart everything in their path. Evan worked quickly, wrapping her in his jacket, heating water with a portable coil. He didn't know how to help an alien give birth, but he knew one thing. He wouldn't let her die. Lyra gritted her teeth, tears streaming down her glowing cheeks. "He's coming," she gasped. "Evan, promise me something." "Don't talk like that," he said. "You'll both make it." Her voice shook. "If I don't save him, promise me you'll save my child." Evan's throat tightened. "You'll be here to do that yourself." The light inside the wreck flickered. Lyra screamed as energy surged through her body, blue light bursting from her skin. Evan shielded his eyes. The glow filled the space like a storm of stars. Then, silence. When Evan opened his eyes, Lyra lay still, her chest rising faintly. A small infant, glowing softly with silver skin, lay in her arms, crying weakly. Evan's heart nearly stopped. He smiled through his tears. "You did it," he whispered. "You did it, Lyra." She smiled weakly, her voice no more than a whisper. "He has your eyes." Evan blinked in confusion. "What?" Lyra touched his cheek gently. "Kind eyes," she said. "Eyes that see life, not power." But before he could speak, a sudden explosion shook the ground outside. The ship walls bent inward, dust raining down. The scanners had found them. Evan cursed under his breath, grabbing his bag. "They're here." Lyra looked up weakly, fear in her eyes. Take him, she said. Please. Evan hesitated. I'm not leaving you. She grabbed his arm, her strength fading. You must, she whispered. If he finds me, he'll take the child, but if he finds you with him, he won't recognize the energy. Lyra, go, she said firmly, her violet eyes glowing once more. Let me protect you for once. Evan's heart shattered. He wanted to refuse, to stay, but one look at her, brave, broken, beautiful, told him what he had to do. He wrapped the baby in his scarf, holding it close to his chest. I'll come back for you, he promised. Lyra smiled faintly. I know. Evan crawled through the narrow gap at the back of the wreck, slipping into the shadows. The snow outside reflected the red glow of fire from the sky. He ran through the wreckage, clutching the infant tightly. Behind him, a beam of light pierced the metal shell. Valen's soldiers landed with blinding speed. Drones surrounded the crash site. Inside the wreck, Lyra stood shakily, her eyes glowing bright white. You won't have him, she whispered. Valen's voice echoed through the communication channel, cold and sharp. Surrender, Lyra. You can't win. Lyra smiled sadly. Maybe not, but I can make sure you don't either. She raised her hand, her body glowing brighter and brighter until the air itself trembled. Her energy's signature erupted into a blinding wave of light. From far away, Evan saw the explosion ripple through the valley, turning the night into day. He fell to his knees, clutching the child, his eyes filled with tears. Lyra, he whispered, his voice breaking. You didn't have to. The shockwave faded, leaving silence, only the faint snowflakes falling over the ruins. In the sky above, Valen's ship shook violently, alarms blared, massive energy surge detected. The commander shouted. Valen stared at the screen, his face pale. She detonated her power core. The commander turned. My lord, that blast. Enough, Valen interrupted coldly. Find her remains and the child. Down below, Evan stood slowly, looking toward the smoking crater where the wreck had been. You saved us again, he whispered. You gave everything. He looked at the baby, whose small silver eyes opened for the first time, staring up at him. The child smiled faintly, and the glow around him dimmed, becoming peaceful. Evan whispered, Don't worry, little one, I'll take care of you. He wrapped the baby tighter and began walking into the frozen wasteland, smoke behind him, stars above him. Each step was heavy, but he didn't stop. Lyra's voice echoed faintly in his mind. Kindness will save the galaxy. Far above, Valen watched the burning surface from his ship, his eyes full of rage and grief. You can run, human, he said softly, but I will find you. Evan didn't look back. The wind howled around him as dawn began to rise, painting the horizon gold. In his arms slept the last legacy of a broken love, the child of two worlds. And somewhere, deep within the ashes of the wreck, a faint shimmer of blue light pulsed once more, as if Lyra's spirit still watched over them. The universe was quiet, but it knew. One life had been lost, and another had just begun. The revelation and farewell. The first light of dawn painted the frozen horizon in soft shades of gold and pink. Evan trudged through the snow, holding the infant tightly against his chest. Each step crunched underfoot, echoing in the quiet valley. The world seemed still, yet he knew danger lurked in every shadow. The child cooed softly, stretching tiny hands, his silver skin glowing faintly. Evan smiled despite the cold and exhaustion. You're safe now, he whispered. No one will hurt you. Lyra's sacrifice weighed on him, her bravery and love echoing in his mind. He had promised her he'd protect the child, and he intended to keep that promise. Suddenly, a hum of engines reached his ears, faint but growing louder. He froze, eyes scanning the sky, and then, to his disbelief, a massive ship descended gently nearby, its sleek silver surface glinting in the morning sun. Evan's heart raced. They found us, he whispered, gripping the child closer. The hatch opened, and Valen Zephyr himself stepped out, towering and regal. Yet his expression was different, not anger, but awe. His golden eyes softened as they fell on Evan, the boy who had survived everything. You, Valen's voice was low, almost broken. You protected my family. Evan straightened. I protected a child, he said simply. I don't care about your power or your wealth. I care about what's right. Lyra, standing behind Valen, smiled faintly, cradling her belly. Though her body was weak, her spirit was strong. He saved us, she said softly, her eyes shining. Even when I could not. Valen knelt down slowly, keeping his distance. The sunlight glinted off his armor, yet his posture was humble. I have spent my life controlling worlds, conquering empires, yet I see now. Kindness is stronger than any throne. Evan blinked, unsure what to say. The once feared billionaire looked almost human in his humility. So, he finally said, what happens now? Valen extended a hand, not commanding, but offering. Your bravery saved my wife and child. Human, I wish to repay you, not with credits, not with status, but with choice, a place among my people, a life beyond this world if you desire. Evan stared, the snow crunching beneath his boots. I don't know, he whispered, overwhelmed. Lyra reached out and squeezed his arm. You saved me, Evan, she said. Now choose your life, for both you and him. She gestured to the infant. He needs someone who will love him without fear. Evan took a deep breath, the wind whipping around him. He looked at the child, the tiny fingers curling around his own, and felt a warmth he had never known. Then, I'll come with you, he said finally, determination in his voice. Valen nodded, pride and gratitude shining in his eyes. Then you shall have it, he said. A life beyond these frozen lands. The snow swirled around them as they walked toward the ship, Lyra supporting herself lightly, Evan carrying the child carefully. Every step felt like the beginning of a new world. Before they boarded, Evan turned back to the valley, the junkyard, the tunnels where so much had happened. This place, it will always be a part of me, he whispered. Lyra smiled softly. It made us who we are, she said, and we survived because of each other. Valen watched quietly, realizing that the boy he had underestimated held the very essence of humanity: courage, kindness, and loyalty. As the hatch closed and the ship lifted into the sky, Evan held the child close, feeling the gentle heartbeat beneath his palm. Lyra beside him, smiling faintly. He's going to be all right, she whispered. Evan looked at her. Because of you, he said, tears in his eyes. Lyra shook her head. Because of us, all of us. The ship soared past the clouds, leaving the frozen valley behind, golden sunlight reflecting off the snow, painting it like a memory they would never forget. Valen placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. Remember this, he said quietly. Power can command, but kindness will inspire. Evan nodded, the weight of the galaxy suddenly light on his shoulders. I'll remember, he said. The child cooed again, looking up at him with trusting eyes. Lyra leaned on Evan's arm, smiling softly. We survived, she whispered. Evan gazed out at the stars, the vastness of space ahead. Yes, and this is only the beginning. And somewhere far above, the red lights of distant ships flickered, powerless to stop what had been born here: a human boy, an alien woman, and a child who carried hope for two worlds. The universe was vast, dangerous, and full of unknowns, but for the first time, Evan felt ready, for kindness, courage, and love had changed the course of fate. And in the quiet hum of the ship, carrying them beyond the horizon, Evan whispered softly to the child, we'll build our world together. The galaxy watched silently as a new story began, one of hope, bravery, and the undeniable strength of humanity.